The phone call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I know the exact time because I was staring at my alarm clock, unable to sleep after another double shift at the diner. When Dr. E. Morrison's voice shattered the silence of my studio apartment. Miss Reynolds. This is Dr. Morrison from County General. Your niece Olivia has been brought in by ambulance. She's in critical condition and needs emergency surgery within the next few hours. The procedure costs $16,000 and her insurance won't cover it. We need immediate payment or we'll have to transfer her to a county facility. But I don't think she'll survive the transport. My hands were already reaching for my jeans before he finished the sentence. How long do I have? 2 hours? Maybe 3 at most. I'm sorry to call you like this. But your sister's phone goes straight to voicemail and you're listed as the emergency contact. You've always been here for Olivia. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just moved. That's what you learn when you're the family scapegoat. The one everyone relies on but nobody respects. You learn to act fast in a crisis because you know no one else will step up. That's your role. That's what you do. The money. I had to get the money. I grabbed my laptop and logged into my bank account with shaking fingers. $16,047. 3 years of saving every extra penny from tips. Every birthday where I bought myself nothing. Every night I ate ramen so I could put $20 away. This was my escape fund. My someday I'll start a real-life fund. My proof that I was worth more than serving pancakes to rude customers at a 24-hour diner. But Olivia needed it. My 8-year-old niece, who I loved more than anything, who my sister Natalie barely had time for since she started dating Brandon 6 months ago. Olivia, who called me whenever she was scared or sick because she knew I would always answer. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my coat and headed out into the cold night. The bank wouldn't open until 9 a.m. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 6 hours, watching the sun come up. My mind racing through worst-case scenarios. What if Olivia didn't make it? What if the surgery wasn't enough? What if I was too late? At 8:55 a.m., I was first in line. The teller, a young woman with sympathetic eyes, processed my withdrawal without comment even though I must have looked insane. I hadn't slept. Still wore my grease-stained waitress uniform. And my hands trembled so badly I could barely sign the withdrawal slip. $16,000 in cashier's checks. My entire savings. Gone in 10 minutes. But it wasn't enough. The total was $16,000. And I only had $47 left. I needed more for the deposit. For the paperwork. For whatever else the hospital might require. I drove to the pawn shop on 5th Street. The one with bars on the windows and a neon sign that flickered. In my purse was my grandmother's emerald ring. The only thing of value I owned. It had been passed down 3 generations. From my great-grandmother to my grandmother to my mother, who had given it to me on my 16th birthday in a rare moment of maternal affection. The pawnbroker barely looked at it before offering me $2,000. I knew it was worth at least 5. Maybe more. But I didn't have time to negotiate. Every minute counted. Deal, I said, and signed the papers without reading them. By noon, I was at County General with $18,000 and an empty bank account. The surgery had already started. They had moved forward based on Dr. Word Morrison's authorization, trusting that I would come through. I found the surgical waiting area on the 4th floor and collapsed into a plastic chair that smelled like disinfectant and fear. A nurse brought me a cup of terrible coffee. I held it between my hands and stared at the doors that led to the operating rooms, willing them to open with good news. That's when Natalie arrived. I heard her before I saw her. My sister has always known how to make an entrance. Her heels clicked against the linoleum floor, and her voice carried down the hallway as she spoke to someone on her phone. I know. It's just been so stressful. But we're staying positive. The doctors say attitude is everything. She rounded the corner, and I saw her. Perfect as always. Her honey blonde hair was styled in loose waves. Her makeup was flawless despite the early hour, and she wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Brandon was right behind her, tall and handsome in an expensive suit, looking like he had just stepped out of a boardroom. Natalie's eyes swept the waiting room and landed on me. For just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Relief. Maybe. Or gratitude. Then her expression went cold. She walked past me without a word, heading straight to the nurse's station. I watched as she leaned against the counter, her voice dripping with concern as she explained that she was Olivia's mother, that she needed an update immediately, that she had been so worried all night. I wanted to scream. She hadn't been worried all night. She had been unreachable. Her phone had gone straight to voicemail when the hospital tried to contact her. I had been the one to rush to the bank, to sell my grandmother's ring, to make sure Olivia got the care she needed. Brandon stopped in front of my chair. He looked down at me with something that might have been amusement in his cold blue eyes. Thanks for handling the financial stuff, Paige. Natalie and I really appreciate you stepping up like that. We've been so busy planning Olivia's recovery celebration. It's important to maintain positive energy during times like this. You know? Can't bring negative vibes into a healing space. I stared at him. Recovery celebration? Olivia was still in surgery. She might die on that operating table. Before I could respond, Natalie returned. She stood next to Brandon and addressed me without making eye contact. You can go home now, Paige. We've got it from here. The doctors said only immediate family should be present. And honestly, you look exhausted. We need to surround Olivia with positive, healing energy when she wakes up. And your whole vibe right now is just really negative. My vibe was negative because I had just given up everything I owned to save her daughter's life. I should have said something. I should have stood up and demanded to be treated with basic human respect. But I was so tired, so emotionally drained. And some part of me still believed that if I just stayed quiet, if I just kept being the good sister, the helpful aunt, eventually they would see my worth. So I left. I drove home in a daze, parked my car, and climbed the 3 flights of stairs to my studio apartment. I collapsed on my bed without taking off my uniform and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. I ignored it at first, too numb to care. But it kept buzzing, over and over, until finally I picked it up. The family group chat. The one I had muted months ago because every message was about plans that didn't include me or jokes I wasn't in on. There were 57 new messages. I scrolled to the top and saw that Natalie had posted a video 2 hours ago. Against my better judgment, I clicked on it. The video was a live stream. Still active. My phone screen filled with the image of a party. Not just any party, but an extravagant celebration that must have cost thousands of dollars. Pink and gold balloons covered every surface. A 3-tier cake sat on a table draped in silk. A live band played in the corner. There was a champagne tower, a dessert bar with custom cookies shaped like hearts, and decorations that spelled out, "Get well soon, Olivia," in glittering 6-foot-tall letters. And there, in the center of it all, was Olivia. My niece looked pale and small in a pink princess dress, wearing a tiny crown. She was awake. She had survived the surgery. And instead of being in a hospital bed resting, she was at this circus of a party, holding a microphone while dozens of people I recognized from family gatherings crowded around her. Say it again. Sweetie. Natalie's voice came from off-camera. Tell everyone who you love. Olivia's voice was thin and tired, but she said the words clearly, like she had been coached. I love my mommy and Uncle Brandon the most. The crowd erupted in cheers. People raised their champagne glasses. Someone set off a confetti cannon. The camera panned to Natalie, who was beaming as she pulled Olivia into a hug. I want to thank everyone for being here during this difficult time, my sister said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. Your love and support have meant everything to our little family. We couldn't have gotten through this without you. Our little family. Not our family. Our little family. The message was clear. I wasn't part of it. The video continued. I watched, frozen, as Brandon stepped forward and kissed Olivia's forehead, playing the role of devoted stepfather. I watched as my mother, tears streaming down her face, gave a toast about how brave and strong Natalie had been through this ordeal. I watched as cousins and aunts and family friends I hadn't seen in years celebrated my sister's devotion to her daughter. Not once was my name mentioned. Not once did anyone acknowledge that the surgery they were celebrating had been paid for with my life savings. Not once did anyone wonder where I was or why I wasn't there. The group chat was full of comments. Hearts and celebration emojis and messages about what an amazing mother Natalie was. What a beautiful party. What a blessing that Olivia was. Okay, I sat there on my bed in my tiny studio apartment, my bank account empty, my grandmother's ring gone, and felt something inside me break. Not break like shatter. Break like crack open. Like a shell that had been holding me together for too long, finally splitting apart to reveal something harder underneath. I had spent my entire life trying to earn a place in a family that had already decided I didn't deserve one. I had sacrificed and struggled and given everything I had, operating under the delusion that someday, somehow, it would be enough. That they would finally see me, value me, love me the way I loved them. But they never would. Because this wasn't about me not being good enough. It was about them needing someone to use, someone to exploit, someone to play the role of the family failure so they could feel better about themselves. I was done playing that role. My hands were steady as I took screenshots. The video of the party, the messages in the group chat, the timestamp showing that this celebration had been happening while Olivia was still in surgery, while I had been sitting alone in that waiting room. Then I opened my banking app and took screenshots of the withdrawal. $16,000. Dated, that morning. Proof of what I had sacrificed. I called the hospital billing department. A tired-sounding woman answered, probably at the end of a long shift. I explained the situation calmly and clearly. I had made a payment for my niece's surgery, but I was not her legal guardian. I needed to transfer all financial responsibility to Natalie Summers and Brandon Matthews immediately. There was a pause. Are you sure? Once we process this, you won't be able to reverse it. I'm sure. I also need copies of all financial records related to my payment. Everything documented and official. I could hear typing on the other end. It will take 24 to 48 hours to process the transfer. I'll email you the documentation. Thank you. I hung up and booked a one-way ticket to Portland, Maine. From there, I would take a ferry to a small island I had read about once. A place where tourists didn't go and cell service was unreliable. But before I left, I posted one thing on my Facebook page. Set to public. It was a photo I had taken through the window of Olivia's hospital room earlier that day, before the surgery. She had been asleep, surrounded by machines, looking so small and vulnerable. The caption was simple. She fought so bravely. Love has no limits. Justice will come. Then I turned off my phone, grabbed my suitcase, and left. The island was exactly what I needed. Cold and gray and isolated, a place where I could finally hear my own thoughts without the constant noise of family obligation and guilt. I rented a cottage from an elderly woman named Martha, who asked no questions and seemed to understand that I needed space. For 3 days, I walked on rocky beaches and let the wind strip away the layers of resentment and pain I had been carrying. On the 4th day, I turned my phone back on. The notifications came flooding in. 347 missed calls. Over 800 text messages. 67 voicemails. I didn't listen to most of them. I could imagine the progression. Confusion when the hospital contacted them about the payment. Anger when they realized what I had done. Panic when I didn't respond. Desperation when they understood I wasn't coming back to fix it. But there was one voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I listened to it. Miss Reynolds, this is Patricia Chen. I'm one of the nurses who cared for Olivia during her hospital stays. I wanted you to know that she's recovering well from her surgery. She's been asking for you. The voice paused. I also wanted you to know that I've been watching you for the past 2 years. I've seen you come to this hospital dozens of times, sitting with that little girl, reading to her, holding her hand while her mother was nowhere to be found. What your sister did to you is unconscionable. If you need someone to testify to that, if you need anything at all, you have my number. I saved that voicemail. Then I started going through the messages from my family. The first ones from Natalie were confused. Where are you? The hospital says you transferred the payment? Call me back. Then irritated. This is so typical of you. Paige. Always being dramatic. Just call me. Then angry. How could you do this to Olivia, your own niece? You're unbelievable. Then desperate. Please. Paige. I don't know what to do. The hospital is demanding payment and Brandon says we don't have it. Please call me back. Brandon's messages were different. They started out condescending. You know we can sue you for this, right? Verbal contracts are legally binding. You promised to pay for Olivia's care. Then threatening. This is fraud. Paige. You're going to face serious legal consequences. Then, finally, desperate, like Natalie's. We can work this out. Just answer your phone. My mother's messages were the most painful. Not because they were kind, but because they confirmed everything I had always known about where I stood in her heart. Paige. What have you done? Natalie is beside herself. How could you abandon your niece like this? I raised you better than this. Call your sister and fix this immediately. No concern for me. No questions about why I had left. Just automatic assumption that I was in the wrong. That I needed to fix it. That my feelings didn't matter. I kept scrolling and found something interesting buried in a message thread. A conversation in the family group chat that had accidentally included me. Probably because Natalie had been typing too fast in her panic. Mom. The caterer is calling about payment for the party. She says Paige's credit card was declined. What do we do? My credit card. They had used my credit card for that obscene party. I went back through my banking app and found it. 3 charges to my credit card that I rarely used. All from the day before Olivia's surgery. Catering company. Party rental. Live band. Total, $8,247. I took screenshots of everything. Then I kept digging and found something even worse. A GoFundMe campaign. It had been created 3 weeks earlier by my mother and Brandon. The title was Help Olivia Fight for Her Life. The description was heartbreaking. Talking about a single mother struggling to afford her daughter's medical care. About the crushing weight of hospital bills. About a community coming together to help a family in crisis. There were photos. Photos I had taken of Olivia during her hospital visits and sent to the family chat. Photos of my niece looking small and sick. Photos that I had shared out of love. Now being used to manipulate strangers into giving money. The campaign had raised $47,000. The account receiving the donations was listed as Westview Realty LLC. Brandon's real estate company. I sat there on that cold island, waves crashing against the rocks, and felt that hard thing inside me crystallize into something sharp and clear. This wasn't just family dysfunction. This wasn't just favoritism or emotional abuse. This was fraud. This was theft. This was illegal. And I had proof of all of it. I booked a flight back to the city that night. When I landed 2 days later, I went directly to a law office I had researched extensively. Sullivan and Chen, specialists in financial fraud and family law. They had a reputation for taking on cases where vulnerable people had been exploited by those they trusted. The lawyer who met with me was Margaret Sullivan, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I told her everything. I showed her the screenshots, the bank statements, the hospital bills, the video of the party, the GoFundMe campaign. I explained the years of being the family scapegoat, the pattern of exploitation, the final betrayal. She listened without interrupting, making occasional notes, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked at me for a long moment. Miss Reynolds, you have one of the strongest cases of financial fraud I've seen in 20 years of practice. Your sister and her boyfriend didn't just take advantage of you emotionally. They committed multiple felonies. The unauthorized use of your credit card is credit card fraud, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The GoFundMe campaign is wire fraud and theft by deception. If they manipulated any hospital billing information, that's healthcare fraud. And they used a sick child to do it, which makes it even worse. She paused, her eyes searching my face. But I need to be honest with you. Cases like this get ugly. Your family will turn on you completely. They'll paint you as the villain. The community might take their side at first. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Olivia's small hand in mine during all those hospital visits. Natalie couldn't be bothered to attend. I thought about my mother toasting Natalie's bravery at that party while I sat alone in a waiting room. I thought about every birthday and holiday where I had been invisible at best, a target at worst. They already have turned on me. I said, I have nothing left to lose. Margaret smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of a warrior preparing for battle. Then let's make sure justice is served. We filed a police report that afternoon. I provided copies of everything, the bank statements, the credit card charges, the GoFundMe records. the screenshots of messages and videos. 2 detectives were assigned to the case. Within a week, they had subpoenaed Brandon's business records and discovered something shocking. The GoFundMe for Olivia wasn't his first fraudulent charity campaign. He had been running similar schemes for years, using fake sob stories and other people's photos to steal money from compassionate donors. The money would flow into his business account, get laundered through fake real estate transactions, and end up in personal accounts. My case had opened the door to a much larger investigation. The local news picked up the story first. Small at first. Just a mention about an investigation into charity fraud. But then donors to the GoFundMe campaign started calling the news station, angry that they had been deceived. A reporter named Jessica Torres contacted me. She had a reputation for thorough, fair journalism, so I agreed to meet with her. We met at a coffee shop, and I told her everything. I showed her the evidence. I explained the years of abuse and exploitation. I talked about rushing to save my niece's life only to be kicked aside and erased. The article she wrote ran on the front page. Local woman exposes sister's scheme to profit from sick child. The public reaction was immediate and furious. The comments section filled with people sharing their own stories of family exploitation. The GoFundMe platform froze Brandon's account and launched an investigation. The hospital released a statement cooperating with law enforcement. And then Natalie did the stupidest thing possible. She sued me. The lawsuit claimed I had made a verbal contract to pay for Olivia's medical care, then reneged on my promise, causing emotional distress and financial hardship. She was suing for the $16,000 plus damages for defamation. It was exactly what Margaret had hoped for. By filing a civil suit, Natalie had opened herself up to discovery, depositions, and public testimony. Everything would come out in court. The trial date was set for 2 months later. In the meantime, the criminal investigation continued. Detectives interviewed hospital staff, party vendors, and GoFundMe donors. They found that Brandon had indeed manipulated the hospital billing system, convincing a corrupt clerk to alter records to hide the source of some payments. Patricia Chen agreed to testify, as did 2 other nurses who had witnessed Natalie's pattern of neglect and my constant presence. The day of the civil trial arrived cold and bright. I wore a simple navy dress, minimal makeup, my hair pulled back. I wanted to look like what I was, an ordinary working woman who had been exploited by people who should have loved her. Natalie showed up like she was attending a gala. Designer dress, perfect hair and makeup, clutching tissues. Brandon sat beside her in an expensive suit. My mother was in the gallery behind them, glaring at me with pure hatred. The judge was Helen Martinez, a 60-something woman known for running a no-nonsense courtroom. Natalie's lawyer painted a picture of a devoted mother in crisis, betrayed by a jealous sister. He talked about Natalie's emotional anguish, the stress of Olivia's illness, my cruel abandonment. Then it was our turn. Margaret stood and methodically destroyed their narrative. She presented the timeline, the emergency call, my immediate response, the withdrawal of my entire savings plus my grandmother's ring, being dismissed from the hospital, the party that happened while Olivia was still in surgery. She played the video of the celebration. I watched Judge Martinez's face harden as she saw the champagne towers and live band, watched Olivia perform for the camera. Then came the financial evidence. The credit card statements showing unauthorized charges. The GoFundMe campaign, with its false narrative and Brandon's business account as the recipient. Bank records showing the money trail. Patricia Chen testified about 2 years of watching me care for Olivia while Natalie was consistently absent. The hospital social worker testified about documented concerns regarding Olivia's care and Natalie's unreachability. Finally, Margaret called me to the stand. I had been nervous, afraid I would break down. But sitting in that witness box, looking at Natalie's fake tears and my mother's contempt, I felt only clarity. I told my story, not with anger or bitterness, but with simple honesty. A lifetime of being the scapegoat. Years of sacrifice and exploitation. The moment in that hospital when I finally understood that I would never be enough for them. Because they needed me to be less than. When I stepped down, Judge Martinez looked at Natalie with disgust. Ms. Fowler. Summers. I have been on this bench for 23 years. I have seen many types of exploitation. But rarely have I seen such calculated cruelty toward a family member who showed you nothing but love and support. You used your own daughter's illness to defraud not just your sister, but the entire community. She turned to Brandon. And you facilitated this fraud, turning human compassion into profit. The judge dismissed Natalie's lawsuit with prejudice. But she didn't stop there. I am referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. The evidence suggests multiple felonies. I am also ordering Child Protective Services to investigate Miss Summers' fitness as a guardian. The courtroom erupted. Natalie screamed. Brandon tried to argue. My mother yelled that I was destroying the family. Security escorted them out. I sat in silence, watching the people who had used me finally face consequences. The criminal trial happened 6 months later. Brandon was charged with wire fraud, credit card fraud, money laundering, and running a fraudulent charity scheme. Natalie was charged with conspiracy and child exploitation. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Brandon was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to all victims. His business was dissolved. His assets seized. Natalie received a suspended sentence with probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. But she lost custody of Olivia. Child Protective Services called me the day after sentencing. Would I consider taking guardianship of my niece? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Bringing Olivia home was complicated. She was 9 now. Old enough to understand that her mother had done terrible things. Old enough to be traumatized by everything that had happened. But she was also my niece. The little girl I had always loved. And she needed me. We started therapy. Both together and separately. Slowly, painfully, we began to heal. Olivia told me things I hadn't known. How Natalie had coached her before the party. How she had felt scared and confused. How she had missed me when I disappeared. Those first months were hard. There were nightmares and outbursts, and days where the weight of trauma felt crushing for both of us. But there were also good days. Days where Olivia laughed. Days where she felt safe enough to just be a kid. We built a life together. A real family, based on honesty and love. The legal proceedings took time. But eventually my guardianship was finalized. Olivia was mine, and I was hers. My mother tried to reach out once. She came to our new apartment unannounced, tears in her eyes, saying she was sorry. I looked at her and felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Just emptiness where love used to be. You made your choice, I said. When I needed you. You chose Natalie? Every single time. So no. You don't get to be part of our lives now. I closed the door. Not with anger. Just with finality. The media attention from the trial led to opportunities I never expected. People wanted to hear my story. Organizations asked me to speak about financial exploitation and family abuse. I started a foundation called Page Forward, dedicated to helping people escape toxic family situations. We provided legal support, financial assistance, and counseling. We helped hundreds of people. People who had been where I was. People who thought they had no choice but to endure abuse. People who finally chose themselves. 2 years after the trial, I published a memoir about my experience. It became a bestseller. Not because my story was unique, but because it was so common. So many people had been the family scapegoat. The one who gave everything and got nothing. The book led to speaking engagements, a documentary, opportunities to advocate for legal reform. But the best part of my new life wasn't the public success. It was the private peace. It was coming home to Olivia, now 13 and thriving, watching her play violin, helping her with homework, being there for the ordinary moments of childhood. It was building a life free from manipulation and exploitation. A life where love wasn't conditional, where I didn't have to earn my worth, where I was enough simply by existing. 3 years after the trial, I stood in the backyard of our house, watching Olivia practice violin. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Paige? It was a woman's voice, shaking and uncertain. This is Sarah. You don't know me, but I was at your talk last month in Chicago. I just wanted to call and say thank you. I've been financially supporting my entire family for 10 years. And they treat me like garbage. After hearing your story, I finally cut them off. I started school last week. I'm going to be a nurse. For the first time in my life, I feel free. I felt tears prick my eyes. That's incredible. Sarah, I'm so proud of you. After we hung up, I stood there in the fading light, thinking about the woman I used to be. The one who sat in a hospital waiting room, feeling worthless and small, watching her entire life savings disappear for people who didn't value her. That woman had been destroyed in that moment. But from her ashes, someone stronger had risen. Someone who understood that love shouldn't cost everything you have. That family shouldn't mean exploitation. That choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Olivia came outside and stood beside me. You okay? Mom? She had started calling me Mom about a year ago. It still made my heart swell every time. Yeah. Kiddo. I'm okay. I'm more than okay. We stood together watching the sunset, and I felt it. The thing I had been searching for my entire life in all the wrong places. Peace. Purpose. Belonging. Not because someone had given it to me, but because I had finally claimed it for myself. They thought they had taken everything when they betrayed me. My money. My family. My place in their world. But they had only taken things that were never really mine to begin with. What they couldn't take was my resilience. My worth. My ability to choose better. The light they tried to steal had always been inside me. They hadn't given it to me, so they couldn't take it away. And now? Finally, I understood that. I was radiant. Not because of them. Not in spite of them. But completely independent of them. This was my life. My family. My light. And it was beautiful.